What's going on, YouTube? Today we're going to be going over a new player guide to the Elder Scrolls Online. Welcome to ESO if you're watching this video and this is one of the first things that you've done as your ESO experience has begun. For those of you who are just watching my videos, we are ending the week where I posted a video and a stream every single day, so thank you. And thank you to those who joined the stream an hour ago that helped me create a list with everything that new players should learn when coming into the Elder Scrolls Online. As a quick addendum too, we made a video yesterday on a returning to ESO guide. I do believe that after speaking with you guys, I will actually be creating a mid-game player guide and how to then take your mid-game character to the end game. That way, this video doesn't become so bloated with tons and tons of information, and we can really focus on those juicy, important points to help you understand specific concepts in the Elder Scrolls Online, especially those that are very different to other MMOs, as this may be your first MMO or your first RPG. We'll be going over all that today. As a quick reminder too, there will be timestamps in this video for everything that we discuss, and this ends the week of me uploading a video every day, so I would be very appreciative if you wouldn't mind subscribing, as we are very, very close to 10,000 subscribers. I appreciate all of you, and let's get into the video. Starting off, we have the character creation screen, which may be the point where you're already confused. You have to pick an alliance, you have to pick a race, you have to pick a class. Let's go through this piece by piece. What is the difference between the alliances that you pick? And the difference is actually very bare bones. The only difference is going to affect you is inside of the Imperial City and Cyrodiil. It will only impact who you can be grouped with, and that is your alliance. So if you're coming in and you have a lot of friends who are in the Armory Dominion and you feel like you're going to want to do PvP aspects with them, I would recommend joining that alliance. Similar, if their friends are in other alliances, you're able to join them as well. This does not affect PvE content. This does not affect overland content. You're able to group with people in all sorts of alliances for any type of PvE content. So this decision will really only be based on if you have pre-existing friends who are already in pre-existing alliances. Next up, we have race. Race is a more important decision, however, where you also get access to free racial change tokens. So if you've already watched this and you're hearing me say about a race being better than another one, do not fret. In fact, my general advice is if you want to play a Nord Nightblade or a Redguard Nightblade, you can play however you want. In Skyrim, yes, you could have done more damage if you came out and fought Alduin as a specific character, but if you don't see yourself mid-maxing your character, your race is not going to matter that much, as it can be changed, as can your alliance, which we talked about above, and overall, the actual roles that these fill is very relative. For example, Bretons make very good DPSs. Then you have Dark Elves, which also make very good DPS, but they can also be a tank. They can also be a healer. Most of these races can do multiple things, so play it how you like. And if you're reading the description of what they can do, and it sounds like it's going to be something that appeals to you, go ahead and do it. I've been playing a Breton since release, just because I feel as though that when I made my character in Oblivion, I made it a Breton, and then I found a role and a build that suited it. This can be done for any of you. There are going to be people that are going to tell you need to min-max to get the maximum amount of DPS and all that other stuff, and we'll talk about that more in the mid-game guide. But honestly, your rotation, the sets that you wear, and your CP point allocation is going to matter so much more. I would encourage you guys to play how you want, and don't feel like you need to restart or spend money to change these things. The key is to have fun, and that also goes into classes. Now, classes is a bit more cut and dry on what they can do. For example, you have a Dragon Knight, which make good tanks, make good DPS, good PvP characters. Not really good at healing. Then you've got the Sorcerer, another really good PvP class. I would say the Sorcerer definitely focuses more on the single target damage done in groups. You're gonna not really be able to have as much group pressure in Sorcerers as you would with like a Dragon Knight, but overall they're very good. Very high mobility, very high single target burst damage. Nightblade, very similar to Sorcerers with just an added emphasis on stealth, whereas Sorcerers can do things like teleport. Nightblades focus more on things like invisibility. Both make great DPS. Sorcerers can be an okay healer, however, I wouldn't really encourage it. both don't really do very well as tanks. Then you have Templars, which are the best in slot healers. They focus on things in PvP such as their gap closing, their ability to heal themselves, the ability to purge negative effects on them. Overall, they're a very versatile class in what they do. They are a bit predictable, but they're great DPSs and they are great healers with okay tanks. Warden, they're pretty decent tanks. They're okay for PvP. They're very predictable in what they do for PvP. However, overall, they're still a very solid class choice, and you wouldn't really want to make them a healer. However, there are ways that you could make them a healer. Then you have the Necromancer, probably one of the best tanking classes, and as a warning, using certain Necromancer abilities in town is a criminal act, and the guards will react accordingly. Guards, by the way, are unkillable. They're pretty good tanks, one of the best tanks in my opinion. Not something you'd really want to use as a healer, and they're also very good DPS. Again, it all comes down to how you want to play. You can play however you want in the Elder Scrolls, and if you see yourself doing only PvP, you don't have to worry about how your role is going to be in a PvES content. And at the end of the day, too, when we start talking about champion points, it's very easy to level up multiple characters, but we'll talk about that when we get there. But this is the race, alliance, and class portion of this video. Again, it all comes down to how you want to play. Coming out of the starter zone, the first thing that I suggest you do is actually a little bit obtuse, and I don't see a lot of people talking about it, but I suggest you go to your collections. You press the start button, you go to your collections, and you see what you have. You go to appearances, you see things like hats, hairstyles, head markings, facial expressions, costumes, skins, personalities, polymorphs. You can also see if you have any mount unlocks, because a lot of people buy versions of the game that come with these very cool things, and they never know that they have access to them, and then they'll go and unlock another type of mount, or they'll go, focus on getting all these cool looking costumes when they don't even know what they had. This is generally still a very simple tip, but I think it's always good to take stock of what you have, as Elder Scrolls Online has hundreds of different versions of it, hundreds of different starter kits and everything that come with it. And honestly, you bought it. See what you got. The next tip I have for you is actually to join both the Mages Guild and the Fighters Guild. You can see that I'm currently in Glenumbra, the city of Daggerfall. The nice thing is you guys are going to be spit out in one of 3 major starter zones, both of which will have both a Mages Guild and a Fighters Guild. Why it's really nice to join these guilds right away is every time you are indirectly or directly involved in a Daedra, undead, or anything else dying, you're going to be passively leveling up your Fighters Guild, and by joining the Mages Guild, you're going to be able to get access to lore books that are in the open world, and by picking up those lore books, you're going to be leveling up your Mages Guild. It's very nice to do these things passively while you're already playing the game, as opposed to getting to the max level and going, my Fighters Guild is level 0, and then now having to power level your Fighters Guild, as that is the only 2 ways to level up these guilds. We'll talk a little bit about leveling up skill lines later, as there is a difference between these versus traditionally leveling up things such as your weapon or your main character skill lines, but pick these up right away, and it will definitely set you up for success. And in line with me telling you that I am in the Glenumbra zone, let's talk about zones. So as you can see on the left side of my map completion, pretty much done everything in this zone, but you may not know what all of these things are, so let's go from top to bottom and explain what exactly everything in this zone is. Starting us off, 24 out of 24 is the main storyline. Anytime you see that icon right there, that's 24 out of 24, you are doing a main story mission. Why do you want to do main story missions? Well, you want to do main story missions as generally the rewards are skill points. Either a skill point every quest, every other quest, or pretty rapidly. Skill points are one of the most necessary resources in the game to level up your character / get access to a lot of good abilities and passive abilities, so they're very important. Below that, we have way shrines, 12 out of 12. That's how many bad boys that you can port to. And then below that, we have delves. Delves are what the game refers to as single player dungeons. You go in there and you get access to a easy boss to kill that can be completed literally right as you come out of the game. and you get access to a Sky Shard. As you may remember from the tutorial, every 3 Sky Shards equals a skill point, so going in there can be relatively helpful. Also note that that Delve boss that you killed is going to drop some overland gear for you, which can also be helpful. That 21 out of 21 is the basically culmination of these other map marker points that you don't see on here, such as the words tree. Basically, that is either a main story area or a side story area which can be completed. Completing these can give you access to a wide range of rewards, and let's talk a little bit about side quests. Side quests get a little bit of a bad rap from other content creators, as generally you don't get a crazy good reward for them. However, side quests can give you access to overland set rewards, mementos, skills, story quest items, and so on and so forth. I think that doing side quests is more fun than a lot of people give them credit for, even if the rewards aren't as good, because generally, even if the rewards aren't as good, they're faster, they still give you access to something, and I think overall there's pretty good rating in a lot of them. Below that, we have the eye cap. These are the striking locales in the area. Below that, 3 out of 3, we have the crafting stations. Basically, that means that there is a craftable set there that you could go in the overworld and craft, such as over here. Below that, we have Mundus stones, very similar to Skyrim and Oblivion. You're able to find these Munduses and equip them to yourself. You can only have one at a time, but you're able to find them in the overworld. Also note that you can usually find them in people's houses, as you are able to purchase them and put them in your home. Public dungeons, very similar to Delves, but have more bosses in them, and if you complete the main boss in the public dungeon, instead of getting access to a Sky Shard, you actually get access to not only a Sky Shard, but a whole skill point as well. Then below that, we have anchors, 3 out of 3. Those are Malag Bal's little attempt to invade our realm. Doing those will give you some set jewelry, which can be pretty helpful in a similar event to a world event / boss, which we could see below. World bosses are also on the map too. They're marked by the skull with the swords through them. World bosses are generally a bit harder than other types of content to do, usually requiring 1 to 3 players to take them down. Generally, base game world bosses are a little bit easier than DLC world bosses, and DLC world bosses generally have better rewards to them. Then below that, we have 16 out of 16 Sky Shards. That's Sky Shards mixed between all the delves, public areas, as well as the hidden ones hidden around the map. And then below that, we have these skill books. Those are the things that we are picking up for the Mage's Guild to level them up. And if you hold to open the zone guide, you'll get even more information about the zone, such as the total amount of quests in the areas. Do you have the achievements for the public dungeon? This is the one that gives you access to the skill point. And most importantly, have you caught all the rare fish in this zone? Next, we're talking about events. About a third of every month in the Elder Scrolls Online is covered by some sort of event. Unfortunately, right now, there is no active event for me to show you. However, in 2 to 3 weeks, we will be having the Pan Elsewhere event. Every single event that is added to the Elder Scrolls Online can be participated in some capacity as long as you are level 10. You can hold me to that. And I always make videos on how you should participate, what you should do, and what you should be farming in these events. Events in the Elder Scrolls Online are generally the #1 ways to farm things such as experience and gold and get rare exclusive items. And I always hate to see new players come in and feel like they can't actively participate. ZeniMax has made sure that anyone at any level can participate as long as they're at minimum level 10, and some can be participated in as soon as you walk out at level 3. I always make, again, a breakdown video. If you're ever confused as to how to start a zone, it will always be featured. It'll have a free icon next to it and say event active. You can click on it. It will even take you where you need to go to start to get involved in the actual event itself. And again, I always want to make sure that I make good videos on every single event, so you can always check out my video, such as my current one on the Pan Elsewhere event. Next up, we have attribute points, your magicka, your health, and your stamina. If you're new to the Elder Scrolls Online, you're going to do one of 2 things. Put all your points in magicka, put all your points in stamina. For those of you who do not know, attribute points are very different than they were in Oblivion and Skyrim, as the total amount of magicka you do have will determine how much damage you do along with your spell damage, similar to weapon damage and stamina. So generally, put every single available attribute point you have into either magicka or stamina. There are ways you can build hybrids, but again, I wouldn't get into anything complex like that until you have a maxed out character and where you're looking at a specific build guide versus trying to experiment around, because unfortunately, to reset these, you do have to pay in-game gold, which can be a bit of a waste. The next most confusing feature in the Elder Scrolls Online has to be the champion point system. I get questions about the champion point system all the time. The champion point system is actually very straightforward. Think of it like this. Every character you have that's either level 1 or level 49 and not yet maxed out at level 50 is leveling up itself. Every character that you have that's over level 50 and is therefore champion point leveled is leveling up every character. But what does that mean, Jake? It means that even if you made a character after you reach champion point level, say you hit champion point 160 on the first character you ever made, the second character you make is going to be able to put in the champion points of 160. It will still be level 3 because it still needs to max itself out, but overall, you're still going to be at that champion point level. So think of any character over level 50 is leveling up all your characters, and your other characters who are level 3 to 49, they're still working on themselves to be able to fully access those champion points, as the only difference between a 49 character that has 160 skill or 160 champion points put in versus a 160 character is if you're level 49, you cannot wear champion point gear. You can only put in the points. That's the only difference. As far as how to build your champion points, that's going to depend on the type of content you do, which we'll talk a little bit later when we talk about how to build for kind of the mid-game for you, as well as kind of what goes along with that. Another important thing to note too is experience is very, very easy to get in the Elder Scrolls Online, but do not feel like you have to go in and get to character 160 immediately. Elder Scrolls Online has an amazing feature where it normalizes your character. What does that mean? It means that when you fight something in the overworld, it doesn't have a level. It means that if a level 3 is wearing level 3 gear, that's the same as level 40 wearing level 40 gear. It's also sometimes referred to as the baby buff, where basically lower level characters are able to compete and do things that higher level characters are able to do. That way you can go in and help participate and do some of the things with your friends, even if you're a brand new character. Next up is very straightforward, and that is joining guilds. You can be in up to 5 guilds in the Elder Scrolls Online, and for those of you who are confused when I was, this is different than the Mages Guild, the Fighters Guild, the Undaunted, etc. These are player-run guilds, and they have all sorts of types of flavors, from trading to PvE to role-playing to social to PvP to questing to crafting. Tons of different variety. The two that I generally suggest are social and those that are trading. For those of you who do not know, Elder Scrolls is a bit different to other MMOs in their overall currency. You can think of RuneScape's Grand Exchange. However, there's multiple Grand Exchanges and they're run and bid on by guilds rotating each week. So it's more decentralized economy. I have tons of videos going over the Elder Scrolls economy, so I won't bore you all with it here. However, what you need to know is that you can list your items up in guild traders to make some sales, or the other reason that I like social guilds is they generally are running activities, helping people get experience, farm world bosses, complete overland achievements, and so on and so forth. Also, the Elder Scrolls Online has tons of Reddits, Facebook pages, bans, Discords, and more, and I suggest that you join those too, so you can really kind of get inundated with the actual community, because Elder Scrolls has a great community. So we talked a little bit earlier about zone quest as well as side quest, but what about these blue arrows here? These are what are referred to as daily quests. Daily quests are very helpful because they give you the ability to every single day generally roll for a rarer item or get a really good reward, because you're essentially gambling as opposed to getting a fixed reward that you would get for doing a main story mission / side quest. So you might be thinking to yourself, where are all these side quests? The number one side quests are accessible to everyone. They are your equipment, and slash consumable writs. I have whole videos going over these two bad boys, but basically every single crafting level is able to pick these up. What you're going to do is craft a level of item based on your crafting level, and you're going to turn in that item, and you're going to roll for gold. You're going to be rolling for gold materials, raw materials, and a number of really good items, as well as you're going to get a fixed amount of gold and experience if you're not already maxed out in that skill line. Another really good example too is every single DLC zone has these daily quests. So you might be thinking to yourself, well, Jake, that's a lot of daily quests. What do you suggest? I suggest the top 5 most recent active DLC zones generally have the best rewards, as these rewards are generally one-time use. For example, it could be a furnishing plan. Once enough people have that furnishing plan, the value will go down. So for example, Galen is the most recent zone, so we have Galen, we have High Isle below it, then we have Fargrave, then we have Blackwood, and then we have the Reach. I think overall, those are the really good 5 areas for you to be able to farm. There are exceptions, there are definitely some other good zones, and I will definitely also be making an updated routines video, daily routines video, as there are some really good bright shining zones in there. But if you're watching this in 3 years from now or later down this year, this is just a very good, helpful tip to remember, is that the more recent DLC zones have the better daily quest rewards. Along with crafting dailies, as well as dailies in DLC zones, the Undaunted dailies, which you will get access to at level 45, are also very good. You're able to take daily quests here and get rewarded in keys. Another quick shout out to both the Mages Guild and the Fighters Guild dailies, as they will level up your companions. We'll touch upon companions a bit later, but Mages Guild especially gives you access to Mages Guild experience, which you generally only get by picking up books. So that can be very, very helpful to farm the Mages Guild daily quest inside of your alliance capital, which for me is Wayrest. Although, even if you're in a different alliance, you can always come to Wayrest. Yours just may technically be Mournhold, but you're able to farm and get some Mages Guild experience, which might be very helpful if you're not playing on PC and have an add-on that tells you where all the books are. Next, we're going to talk about settings. This is going to be in your options, and there's going to be a couple things that I would suggest. Starting with gameplay, consolidate area loot, auto loot, and turning off auto loot stolen items off, and prevent stealing placed items to on, auto add to craft bag, loot history, as well as making sure you use your gold purchase soul gems first. Then you're also going to be able to change in the same area under combat queues. I generally suggest that you make this a little bit more pink, as it makes it easier to see on the ground, especially in some of those more volcanic-esque dungeons and trials, which there's a significant number of. The other thing too that's worth also noting is in nameplates, you can also change seeing health bars, people seeing their damage taken, as well as enemy indicators. In social, there's some other good things here too. You can turn off leaderboard notifications, which will be a significant number of your notifications if you join guilds. You can turn it to auto duel off, as well as the same for Tales of Tribute. Other things, you can make certain guilds pop in different colors. I do this to the guilds that I manage to know which one's talking without having to read. Combat though, most important, ability bar always show. Very helpful to see what abilities you have. Ability bar timers on, ability back bar timers on. Attribute bars always show. I also love numbers and percentages. Active combat tips, I would suggest that you leave this on, because there's a lot of concepts in regards to combat that confuse people, such as bashing, blocking, roll dodging. What's the difference? You know, how does it work and everything else? Interrupting, you know, how does all of that affect different things? I suggest that you keep active combat tips on, as those core combat mechanics can be a bit confusing. Ultimate numbers, always keep on. Text, always keep on too. It's always nice to know how much damage you're doing. Either it's overtime, not overtime, how much damage you're taking. Buffs, always show your buffs. It's nice to know. To make sure also you have a Mundus Stone on, because sometimes I lose my Mundus Stone on accident. Also, it's good to see how long your buff food is, how long your XP potions have left on you, and so on and so forth. And that's really all I would change. I don't personally do anything with accessibility, but ZeniMax does have a nice bit of flavor here if you would like something in addition to that and your accessibility settings. Next, we're talking about treasure maps and survey maps. There's a general misbelief that they must suck because you're picking them up at early levels, and I cannot stress to you how wrong that is. While generally it's helpful to open up these chests after you hit max level, treasure maps as well as survey maps have really good rewards in them. I have a whole separate video on how to make sure you know which treasure maps are good, as some of these treasure maps are worth 500,000 gold. So always make sure that you don't just assume that what you're picking up is worthless, as these are rewards that you can get doing any type of content. Survey maps, you want to make sure that you have the maxed amount of crafting / pickup rewards for lootable overland items. We'll talk about that more in the mid-max video, but do not destroy your surveys and do not destroy your treasure maps, at least until you have confirmed that what you're getting is not going to be helpful or worth anything. The next tip is actually kind of two things wrapped into one, and that is the Armory system, which is a free system inside of the Elder Scrolls Online. The Armory is a free pick-upable item that you can place in your house, which you can also get for free, that being a house in the Crown Store. You're able to put this bad boy down and you're able to flip easily between sets. You can see that I have both a PvP and a PvE setup. What's really nice about this is that if you have a blank slot, for example, or 2 blank slots, as you may not have anything equipped, you can also equip a blank space to get yourself fully reset. What's also really nice is you can easily switch between Munduses and curses, curses being vampirism and werewolfinism. It's very helpful to have the Armory system, and it's free to use and is definitely one of the most helpful inclusions. Now you might be thinking to yourself, Jake, how do I know what build I should be using? There's a very straightforward tip for this that you can utilize at any time, any year, any way. All you have to do is Google your class. Let's say I'm a sorcerer, PvE, update, let's say we're in the future, we're on update 38, and then you will see build videos specific to that update, because you do not want to watch build videos from over a year ago. While they will still give you a general idea, there's tweaks to abilities, tweaks to build, new sets added to the game. If you're going to truly be min-maxing a character, you just want to make sure you're doing it in the most updated version of that video possible. And that's the easiest way to search for it, is search by the actual patch versus searching on just which video has the most views. To top off the daily routines that I suggest to you, that's going to the stable on your character. The stable is going to give you access to 3 upgrades that you can pick from: speed, stamina, carrying capacity. I always suggest carrying capacity for new players because it gives you access to a bag space. You might think to yourself, well, how does that work with mounts? It's very straightforward. You don't have to have a mount out. I've been walking this whole time. I've still had access to all 60 carrying capacity slots. Stamina just keeps you from getting knocked off your mount, and speed is just how it sounds as speed. Both of which are helpful, but personally for me, I need my inventory space. I need to be able to loot all the items. Speed is great. That's generally what I would do second. And then stamina is what I would suggest to pick up third. You're able to get 1 upgrade every 20 hours, and you're going to want to start doing this as soon as you're able to. Going along with the topic of doing something as soon as you're able to, we have researching traits. Now, this is something that has been a bit of a new suggestion. Researching traits gives you the ability to craft items in a specific trait. That's very bare bones. That's how it's been for quite a long time. However, if you want to transmute an item, which we'll explain what transmuting is in just 1 second, you have to have that trait learned. You see, it used to be, let's say I got a chest piece of the God Slayer set, whatever, and it was in Sturdy, and I really wished it was in Divines. Well, it used to be in the day. Too bad, so sad. Go get another one, you loser. But now you have the ability to transmute from one trait to another. using a handy dandy transmute station. What's the downside, you might be thinking? Well, the downside is you have to have two things. You have to have transmute stones, which you'll be able to farm relatively easy. You'll get them from doing daily dungeons, daily battlegrounds, from Cyrodiil. You'll get them sometimes as login rewards, etc. But the other unfortunate thing is you have to have that trait learned. So what I generally suggest is start learning traits immediately. If you start picking up traits, go down either to a guild hall or a local crafting station, which you'll always be able to see on the maps. This is the main city inside of Daggerfall. You can see Tradesman Square has access to all of the trade stations that you would need to be able to access, and start researching those traits immediately. Again, I would suggest starting with Divines and then moving over to something like Impen, depending on the type of character that you want to build. The reason I suggest starting with a specific trait as opposed to just doing any trait at random is that the traits that you do, the more of them you do, the longer time it takes for you to complete that item. So the first trait might be done in a few minutes to a few hours, whereas the final trait may take upwards of 30 days depending on how many passive skill points you have put into those passives for research timers. So very important to start with important traits first, in my opinion, although if you start early enough and you know you're not going to get to the point where you're transmuting gear, you could start anywhere, but please just start. That's the important part. As a segue, let's talk about skill points. We talked a little bit about them earlier, but you might be thinking to yourself, well, if there's so many areas and so many zones and things to do, what is the fastest way to get skill points? And while the fastest way is generally to go from public dungeon to public dungeon, farming skill points by killing the main boss there's tons of ways you can get skill points, such as going to a DLC zone and doing the main story quest. Every single main story mission in a DLC zone is guaranteed to give you 1 skill point, which is definitely better than base game zones, which sometimes you can do upwards of 3 without getting a skill point. But you're also able to get sky shards. You're also able to, again, kill public dungeon bosses, which I think is the most effective. However, you might be in a situation where you don't have any way shrines nearby and you don't have any access to that zone, but let's not forget, we joined ourselves some guilds earlier. You can easily teleport to other players for free without having to pay any cost and get access to different zones this way, which is a very, very helpful tip when it comes to going out and being able to be in different places. Other ways you can get skill points includes things like Cyrodiil upgrades, which is tied to your alliance point level, which we'll also talk about when it comes to your alliance level. What a segue. We're now in Cyrodiil. You might think to yourself, whoa, Jake, this is a new player's guide. I do not know if I want to go to Cyrodiil. Well, here is the beautiful piece of this. You see that 1 out of 1 at the top that you're like, there's a main story quest for Cyrodiil and there's only 1 of them? Yes. And by doing it, you actually get alliance points and alliance point levels, which can help you in 2 ways. But let's talk about how you know where to go. And this will help you with any major zone that you get lost in, you may not know where to go. You hold, which for me is the X button, which will open the zone guide. And then you would press, for me, the X button to explore the zone. You can see for me, it is grayed out in the bottom middle of the screen, but that will actually take you to where the main story mission is, whether it's continuing the main story mission or starting the main story mission. Basically, you're going to do a quick quest here inside of Cyrodiil, and it's going to get you to level 3, support and assault. You might think to yourself, Jake, what does that mean? Well, basically, they're skill lines. They're Alliance War skill lines. You can see that I have level 10, which is the max level for these. So you're able to get yourself to level 3. You don't have to fire a shot at anybody. You don't have to ever go into PvP and you can get yourself to level 3, which is very helpful because that will give you access to Vigor, which is a very, very good stamina heal, as well as Rapid Maneuvers, which is a very good ability to give yourself a little bit of extra speed, because sometimes just getting to places faster could be one of the #1 tips that I would have for you. So that's overall very, very helpful. And if you do enjoy PvP, doing PvP will give you access to a lot of skill points. If you're ever confused as to what alliance level you are, you can see just below my face here that I am level 42 out of 50. Every single time you level that up, you yourself will be getting a skill point. So we just talked about leveling alliance skill lines, but what about your class skill lines and your weapon skill lines? Well, and your other stuff too, like your armor skill lines. Well, very straightforward. The amount of abilities you have on your skill bar determines how fast you level it up. If you have 0, you're not going to get any levels unless you're using that weapon, such as a destro staff, but it's going to be going very slow. What I suggest is have a mixture of every single class ability, including an ultimate if you're able to slap on an ultimate. Even if you're not using the ultimate, slap it on there. And whatever weapon you're leveling up, whether it's your destro staff, you know, throw on a destro staff ability. That way you're actively leveling up all those things. It's very similar to with gear. Wear a mixture of medium, light, and heavy armor, as you generally want to have a mixture for both PvE and PvP of these things. I would encourage you guys to definitely have either a 2, a 2, and a 3, or a 5, 1, 1 set up so that you're slowly leveling up all these. I generally suggest 2 light, 2 medium, or 3 heavy, or 3 light, 2 medium, 2 heavy. That's definitely the most efficient way to level up those skill lines. And then once you've maxed one out to 50, you can take all the gear off that, and then you can split between 4 and 5 of medium and heavy, or whatever hasn't been fully leveled up yet at that point. So if you remember the transmute station from before, we were able to transmute one item to the same item with a different trait. But it actually also does something else too. You can actually reconstruct gear that you had previously. What that means is that, for example, we are in the Alakir Desert, which means that every type of content we do is going to give us one of 3 sets. These are the 3 sets here. We are able to deconstruct these items and bind them to our sticker book at any level and be able to reconstruct them at a later date. The reason why this is so important for you as a new player is that I generally suggest that you put on everything that you pick up. But I think there's a lot of fear is like, what if this is valuable? What if it's important? Whether you sell it to a vendor, you know, that being an NPC merchant and not a player vendor, or research it, or deconstruct it, you yourself are going to bind it to your sticker book, which means at a later date, when you're higher level, or you need it in the future, you are able to get it again with just a simple cost of transmute stones. Next, I want to talk a bit about the currency. So gold, very straightforward. Use it to travel away shrines, buy things from other players. Then below that, you have your alliance points. Your alliance points are basically anytime you kill a player or do a quest inside Cyrodiil or a battleground, you're going to be building up your alliance points. These can also be converted to other very cool items. Below that, we have Telvar stones. Telvar stones, similar to alliance points, but they're exclusive to the Imperial City. Basically, doing activities inside the Imperial City are going to give you Telvar stone, but this is very important. You're probably going to get Telvar stones from your login rewards, and you're going to want to bank those before you go out in the Imperial City, as if you die with Telvar stones on you, you will lose half of them. And if you kill a player, you take half of their Telvar stones. So before you go out into the world of the Imperial City, please bank your excess Telvar stones. And below that, you have your writ vouchers. Your writ vouchers basically are what you're able to get for doing crafting quests, and you're able to buy different assortment of items with them. You pick up these crafting quests by buying writ books. The writ book is basically a quest that you can do as many times as for as many books as you own to get these writ vouchers, and you can turn them to some pretty cool items also. And finally, the biggest question that I hope to answer for you in the Elder Scrolls Online as a new player is, where do you start? You could pretty much go anywhere and do anything, so how do you know what to do? And I am going to give you a cop-out answer as well as show you a map as to how you can play in chronological order. But really, if you want to go explore an area, like if you're like me and you loved Skyrim and you were like, I really want to see these other zones in the Elder Scrolls universe, go explore. Do whatever zone you want. Do not feel like you're tied to a specific area, or you'd be most efficient if you started with this zone versus another one, because at the end of the day, while it is an MMO, it shares a ton of RPG elements, and it really comes down to what you want to do. What are you going to find fun? I enjoyed exploring. I fully recognize, though, that other people enjoy other things when they're starting an MMO, and that's okay. and you are not going to be behind because you decided to do one zone to level up and get sky shards in, or to do the zone story quest versus another one. The key and the main goal is to have fun. It's all about the journey, and the journey in the Elder Scrolls Online is one of the most fun journeys you can have, and I hope that this video was helpful and that you learned a lot. As that's going to wrap up this video, I want to thank you guys so much for watching. I will be making a mid-game guide for players who are looking to step up, learn a little bit more about how to start getting into the end game, what you need to do for trading, how to get involved in different types of prog groups, and other such things. I think it'll be helpful to kind of highlight those things in a specific guide, kind of dedicated to that, as why I did a returning player guide and a new player guide. I do think that there's some other concepts that I want to go over with you, but I also don't want to make either of those guides over an hour long. So it's best to break them up. That way everyone kind of has little digestible pieces of what they want to learn. And overall, I think it was fun to do, and I hope this video was helpful. But do you have other tips for new players? Put them in the comments below. And as a reminder, redo a giveaway, re-pull 2 winners at the beginning of every month. All you have to do to enter is leave a comment in the comments below. Re-pull 1 comment from everybody, and then re-pull another comment from subscribers only. 35.6% of you are subscribed. Let's get that number to a round even 36%, as I'm on the road to 10,000, and I would very much appreciate it. But that is going to wrap up the video. I thank you guys so much for stopping by and watching, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye, guys.
You better remember to like and subscribe to Jake Clips. Or you should. I might have to pluck your eyes if you don't. Or, better yet, I'll skip rope with your entrails. Do it now. Subscribe. Ta-ta. Off with you.
Thank you for sticking around past the end. This is definitely a long one. Thank you for those of you who were on stream and helped give tips and ideas for this video. I don't know how many videos we'll be able to do this week due to I was checking my work phone, and it's gonna be chaotic. I could already tell that it's just gonna be a day of pain and suffering, so not looking forward to it, but looking forward to continuing the Elder Scrolls content with you. I might make a 2023 video, why you should play the Elder Scrolls in 2023, something like that, just to help lighten the mood. You know, I always love to focus on the positivity. I'll definitely be making a mid-game player guide, or maybe like a mid-max player guide, or an end-game player guide, something along those lines to help give more tips specific to things like consumables and trading and how to find groups and do trials and get into that, whatnot. So that'll definitely be, I think, in a guide specific to that. But let me know what you think, and I'll see you guys later. Bye, guys.